This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Wednesday afternoon. It's May 1st. It's May, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are still playing basketball. So for today's show, we're going to start digging into what the players and coaches are beginning to say about this Wolves-Nuggets series. Jace Frederick and I did a full-on preview of the series on Tuesday. So if you're looking for that, that's one episode back. But when Jason and I recorded, we hadn't had the chance to talk to anyone. The Wolves traveled back from Phoenix a little bit later, and then just had their first practice for this series this afternoon. Chris Hine from the Star Tribune was there at practice today. He's here with us now, so we're going to get into it. Chris, round two, how are you? Are you ready to go?
Let's do it. Flying out tomorrow night, Thursday night. The Wolves are going to get out there a little early, get adjusted to the elevation, maybe practice out there on Friday, and your friendly traveling beat writer will also be getting used to the elevation and hydrating, and because it's necessary even for us.
I'll be there a day after you, and maybe we're gonna be spending a lot of time in Denver here. We will see.
Who knows?
Some quick announcements before we get into this. Reminder that we are brought to you by Prize Picks. I took a look at it. My favorite pick for game one, Aaron Gordon, more or less than 0.5 threes. I think Aaron Gordon's going to take some, given the way the Wolves guard him. And I think he might make one in that one. So put that in your lineup. That's prizepicks.com. The Prize Picks app. You can use promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. And then also want to put on your radars that next Thursday, May 9th at Falling Knife. It's the day before or the night before game 3 when the Wolves are back at home. We are going to be doing a live show there. The normal setup, 6 p.m. Come get a seat. We'll do some happy hour, say hi, and then we'll do the live show at 7 p.m. and hang out a bit after that. Hopefully it will be nicer weather, which means there'll be more seating, outdoor seating. There's speakers out there, so even if you'll be able to hear us even if we're set up out there. We're kind of still figuring out the weather, but put that down.
Can I come and just heckle you guys the whole time?
Of course.
Right.
Of course. I don't know. Are you gonna ever leave Denver? I feel like maybe you'll just
seriously, I might just sublet a place for the month out there. Who the hell knows?
Doesn't sound too bad. But yeah, keep that on your radars. We'll keep letting you know about that. Kyle Tegge's gonna be back in town for that. So, Chris, today at practice, yes, we didn't get to talk to Chris Finch, of course, because he was under the knife today. He had the surgery. I don't know. That's just reminding me. I feel like didn't Chris Finch having a surgery when the Rudy Gobert trade happened? Does that ring a bell to you?
Did he? I
feel like it was some trade. Maybe it was. There was another time where Finch had a surgery at something big.
Surgery?
Yes. I promise. I'm going to ask somebody with the Wolves. Yeah, it might have been the day Rosas got fired. There was something big happened, and Finch was like under.
I'm normally pretty good at remembering things like this. I don't recall this at all.
Well, maybe I'm just making it up. My head's full of different things. But anyways, Chris Finch had surgery today, and we had the chance to talk to Mike Conley, who's stepping in as kind of the lead here in Finch's absence. He said the surgery went well. What did you kind of make of what we got from Micah? It seemed generally that they're beginning to put the pieces together about how to make this thing work, to have Finch be involved, but obviously he can't be standing out there in front. What are you making of this situation?
The goal is to have Finch in and around the bench area in some capacity, which I think everybody with the team wants. Finch wants. I don't think he doesn't want to be back in the locker room like that ESPN report suggested. He doesn't want to be up in a suite, which is what Micah threw out there today is kind of like almost like a worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. If they can't figure something out around the bench area. But I think they're going to do anything they can to find a way to have Finch in and around the bench area. They were talking about maybe removing some seats, from where the front row is. Do you put them off into the corner? Do you put them behind the scorer's table? Do you put them in the second row? It's all. It seems like it shouldn't be that hard to figure out, but I guess with when you have paying customers and things like that, and people are entitled to have their tickets. So you got to figure out a way to do it. You know, do you try to buy these people out and maybe, have another seat or two back there extra? Who knows?
You could squeeze one in, but next to Glenn and Becky, right?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe the leg.
I mean,
there.
At home, it's probably a little easier to figure out. I think on the road, it might be a little more difficult. But I think the end goal is that Finch will be around the bench area, able to communicate in some capacity. I think they're optimistic about that happening. We just have to see what they come up with.
I think, and Micah kind of hammered this home at practice today. Like, an important thing is they have some time before this series, and some time really benefited them before the Phoenix series. They clearly put together a really good process for adapting, adjusting, and planning for Phoenix, using the lead up time they had ahead, specifying the analytics department's doing this part of the coaching staff's doing this, that. Like, so I say that to mean like they have an infrastructure in place of how to prepare for these situations. And I think it sounded like they're applying a lot of the same plan and process, just switching out Phoenix for Denver. And so to that end, I don't think it's really like everybody's jobs change in preparation all that much. It's kind of like, do the same thing you were doing for the Phoenix series, apply it to the Denver series. I mean, Finch at the end of the day was just kind of like the overseeing czar of the whole situation. And I think he probably still remains that, though out of commission for some period of time here in the lead up to Saturday. But I think that's a little important and noteworthy that they've had a little bit of time. Finch had a little bit of time before he went under the knife to kind of put this process into place.
Yeah, they had Monday and Tuesday. It's the same amount of time they had between the end of the regular season and the start of the first round. It's kind of, you can almost kind of go day by day with the same way that you prepare, given that it was Sunday to Saturday kind of a turnaround.
Right.
So, Micah said that Finch on Tuesday was, obviously very much involved with kind of setting up the week and mapping out how this week was going to go for them, game planning, individual tendencies, things like that. And the other thing about this is the Wolves know Denver probably better than they know any opponent in the Western Conference. So I don't know how much, that's kind of something I asked Micah today, was I don't know how much additional prep work they really need to do, or how much digging into Denver they really need to do, because they played them in the playoffs last year. Finch and Micah were assistants in Denver. Tim obviously ran the Nuggets for a long time. Like, there's a lot of familiarity here, and I don't know how much, what new things you're necessarily going to uncover or discover about this team when you have a week to prepare that you can't knock out in maybe a couple days. So I think that honestly the week off, probably more importantly, is just like a chance for the Wolves to just rest physically, recover, because we saw what they were able to do defensively, especially in the first two games of that series against Phoenix, when they were well rested and they came out with some of the, I think the most intense and focused defensive efforts of all season. So I think that's important. And I think it's big that, we have a little kind of weekend-ish series here. It's like Saturday, Monday is game 1 and 2, and then we have a 3-day break between games 2 and 3. That's another chance for this team, which really needs to play defense at a high level to win this series, to catch its breath mid-series, which I've covered a lot of playoff series between the NBA and the NHL now. I've never seen a 3-day break in the middle of a series like this before. This is the first time I've ever seen this. So I think the schedule really plays into the Wolves' favor, I think, especially early in the series.
Yeah, it was all dependent on that Game 5 Lakers-Nuggets game. Had the Lakers extended the series, Game 1 of round 2 would have been pushed back a little bit and cut into that day off time. I guess that's just a product of needing to leave open some optionality there. But yeah, Finch, so today's the 1st, and Game 3 at home is on the 10th. So he's 9 days out of surgery by the first game back in Minnesota. And you would think by that time, whether from a recovery or just kind of like settled into his new normal of having an immobile. Like he will be settled into his new normal by then. But there's going to be some things to navigate here. I think it was interesting that Nori said to your question about that was he's like, look, we know how we're going to guard them, and they know how we're going to guard them, and vice versa. To your point, like it reminds me of Phoenix coming into the first round series. Like if you're Phoenix, you're like, all right, we beat them 3 times during the regular season. We have a good plan for Ant, right? That we saw kind of play out during the regular season. Sort of the same thing for the Wolves. They know how their personnel best guards Nikola Jokic and kind of works down from there. Like they're not coming into the series with an adjustment. Maybe at some point they have to adjust, given how Denver reacts, but this isn't a really like Finch in the lab cooking up a whole elaborate setup. They're going to guard Jokic with Cat. They're going to have Gobert off of Gordon, and they're going to lurk around that. I think the minutia is stuff like, okay, when Cat's not on the floor, is Rudy going to guard him? Or are you going to have Kyle or Nas kind of take that? Rotations, those sort of things of like, how are you going to navigate Nikhil playing versus McDaniels playing? Do you want Ant or Cat in for the non-Jokic minutes? Like those are all things. Those don't require practice to figure out. Those are things I would imagine that Finch and Nori and the whole coaching staff got out of the way, before today here, because they basically had that set of notes already set from this season, last regular season, last playoffs. Like they know how to play this team. I was saying another important part, Chris, is they still have Mike Conley. And I don't say it to diminish at all from Chris Finch or Mike Conley or anything, but their coach on the floor, their coach that I think has greatly influenced the way in which Ant has elevated from an intellectual standpoint on the floor, is still there. Mike Conley talked a little bit about it at practice today. He talked about how he's the one sitting next to Anthony Edwards in the film sessions. He said, I'm a part of it. Everybody in here has been a part of his growth and his development. When we're in film sessions, we're constantly in each other's ear. If he's about to explode about coach saying something bad about him, I'll tap him on the shoulder and be like, chill, you need to hear this. This is real. He's being honest with this one and you need to work on it. And he'll be like, all right, bet. Just kind of really receptive to stuff. So I'm glad I'm there to gauge his mental and make sure he's paying attention to the right things. So I think that's a huge part of any additional translation, if needed, because Micah and Ant, we know, have a good relationship too. Like Mike Conley is there to smooth that out. I think that's big.
It's huge. That's on obviously the offensive end of the floor, and we saw like in the that middle part of the season or towards the All-Star break when the Wolves made that kind of switch in their strategy of having the offense play in front of the bench in the second half. So
I remember that.
Remember how they I know it feels so long ago, but they made that switch a little more than halfway through the season. And so I think it's been a helpful switch. It seemed like it helped in the Phoenix series, especially in games 3 and 4 there, just to have that little bit of extra energy around the bench and around the offense in a late game situation. So that'll be probably, I imagine they'll keep that the same when they go to Denver here. So if Finch is there, he's able to communicate to Micah, who can relay it quickly to Mike. Like that communication, I think late in games shouldn't be too affected by Finch being wherever he is. He could probably get a call out, especially as the game slows down and you get more, end of shot clock things. You could probably get a call in or whatever pretty easily. I'm just thinking about this whole thing from a logistical communication standpoint, how quickly you can communicate from wherever Finch may be to the floor if he's trying to change something or get something. Because how many times do we see Finch like kind of sprinting up towards midcourt to like wave his hands and like signal something out to people? I'm like, how is this process going to work? On the other end of the floor, I think it's important to note that Rudy is very much the quarterback of the defense, the same way Mike is the quarterback of the offense. And one of the reasons why Rudy was pushing for that switch to happiness where they play different halves is because Rudy told the coaching staff at the time, like, I can handle the defense.
I got it. Yeah.
I got the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be a lot on Rudy just to kind of run the defense in the second halves of these games. Like, he's the one who's there. He can communicate. He knows what they're doing and where everybody should be. So I think it's going to be on him on the defensive end, kind of similarly the way it is on Mike on the offensive end. But I think just in the second halves of these games, because of the defense playing at the other end of the floor, I think it's going to be a little more on Rudy's shoulders to be the one really making sure everything's organized at that end.
Absolutely. I want to get into for the rest of the episode, just kind of digging into a couple of the weapons the Wolves have in this series. I want to continue talking about Ant with that. And then also maybe some weapons that Denver has or weak points that maybe the Wolves have in this series. But we'll grab our first break here, and then we'll get going from there. And today's show is brought to you by Supreme Lending. And if you are ready for a winning mortgage experience, if you are in that process of needing to buy your home and finance your home, meet Ben Coulter with the Mortgage Dream Team at Supreme Lending in Edina, Minnesota. With over 20 years in the business, Ben knows how to score big when it comes to mortgage deals. He's a dedicated Wolves fan. He's been there since day one, was at the first game at the Metrodome. And wanted to work together with all of you in the Wolves community. If you are at the stage of your life where you are looking to get a mortgage for a dream home, the Mortgage Dream Team offers a deep playbook to help. They have an 8-day close. Close your loan in as fast as 8 days for a leg up on the competition. $25,000 close on time guarantee. They guarantee your deal closes on time. And the Minnesota Housing Program, which is up to $18,000 in down payment or closing cost assistance. Again, you can look up on the screen here. You can use the QR code to go to twolvesmortgages.com, or you can type in twolvesmortgages.com to let Ben and his team know you are ready for your dream home. Again, that's twolvesmortgages.com, or you can call Ben at 612-268-5454. Today's show is also brought to you by Autograph, and I've been telling you guys about Autograph and downloading the Autograph app as a place to sort of get all your Wolves content in one place. How it works is you read Chris's stories, John's stories, you listen to this show, and you get, if you consume them through the app there, you get these fan coins. And they have a promotion going on, not promotion, a reward going on right now where you can be entered to get 2 tickets to Game 3 at Target Center for $24 each. To enter, you use 1,000 of those fan coins, and that will be announced on Thursday, May 9th between 2 and 2:15 p.m. So you're just going to want to download the Autograph app and enter for the chance to get these tickets here. And you can do that by downloading the Autograph app and doing that. You can use, here it is, the QR code on the screen here, and you can go to Autograph and use code DaneMoore to let them know that you came from us. It's a free app, App Store, Google Play Store, an opportunity for you to have all your Wolves content in one place and maybe get some cheap tickets for Game 3 that I know are not cheap to buy yourself. So that's the Autograph app on the App Store or Google Play Store. Referral code DaneMoore there. All right, Chris. I was thinking about it, like going into practice today, of what weapons do the Wolves have in this series? What weaknesses might they have there? And kind of in this Denver thing, like the first place my head goes to is like a weapon is the way in which they can use Gobert, but I don't think that's the biggest weapon. So I want to hold off on that one. I think the biggest weapon is the best player. It's Anthony Edwards and his ability to solve the way in which they are guarding him in this, much like that was the task at hand in the Phoenix series, which he obviously passed that test with flying colors. I asked Mike Conley today about, what are the challenges for Ant in this one? What are the things you need him to do like you did in the Phoenix series last round? And he said it was a lot of the same. Again, navigating that playmaking responsibility. It's more so with Denver, like Jokic is up, like he kind of does that. He like the high wall thing we're kind of used to, and Jokic kind of does like his jumping jacks, kicking his legs around, like not going to let you find that pocket pass as much. I think that makes sense. Part of this is navigating and trying to exploit the ways in which they use Nikola Jokic in coverage there. I think that's been one of the things that stood out to me most this year. Watching Denver is improvement from Jokic defensively. He was really good last year. I think he's honestly gone from being viewed as defense being a weakness to him being an extremely impactful defender, even if not in the traditional like defending the rim sort of way. He's good at this coverage against Ant, against confusing guards, or at least buying time for the guy to get back to help there. I think that's a big part of this. Is Ant being able to read that and blow that up? That's he's always a weapon. That's where that weapon becomes super powered, is when his threat is not only to score, but to empower his teammates too. Kind of with that, that's one of the biggest weapons in this. Obviously Ant, but specifically his ability to, again, balance scoring versus playmaking dependent on coverage.
It is. He was able to really find some weaknesses last series, and I think it had everybody excited, even despite the 5-game loss. Mm-hmm. I think about that game in Minnesota here when they didn't have any big men available for that one. You remember, and it was on a back-to-back, and
Kyle Anderson started.
Yeah, exactly. Like Ant played a great game that night when they were severely shorthanded in that game, and they almost won despite it. I feel like Ant, I don't know if it's a classic thing where Ant just, gets up for the Denver games or whatever during the regular season or whatever. I just feel like he typically just plays well, is able to figure it out, plays a more focused game against these guys because they probably have his attention and his respect. It's the playoffs, and everybody has his attention and respect in the playoffs. But I feel like even more so, this being the champs. I think one of the things you saw in the Phoenix series that I noticed a lot of, especially in the second halves of that game against Phoenix, was Ant would get off the ball early on the times they would double him. I remember one possession in particular. He threw it to Mike, who was, the logical, easy pass over. Phoenix immediately, like, the double left, and then Mike just threw it right back to Ant.
Yeah.
And Ant would just attack off of that. It's literally like that's all you have to do sometimes.
Right.
Is just pass it, wait for the double to dissipate, you get it back, and then you can go. Like that's literally as simple as it can be at times, and that happened a decent amount in that Phoenix series, especially late in those games. So
it wears them down, right? Like that could if you're forcing them to put 2 on it and then move off of it, even if they do scramble back, and like the Wolves are really good at that. Like, right, that was the last play of the Phoenix game before the Ant dunk, right? Like that's the idea, is needing to scramble around, and the Wolves did a great job on that play. But you know what's hard to do? That a whole game, and do it consistently. Like, it is the way, I think, to wear down the Denver defense, whether it's Ant and they put 2 on the ball there, or if they do put 2 on Cat in the post and you just swing it and move it. And then, they wear it down.
If you're going to play that high wall kind of coverage, you do have to scramble in and around it.
There's no
the
other
Wolves
option.
Did that 2 years ago. That was how they played defense. So that is how you have to play defense. And when you have a team that's not deep, like Denver is not deep, as the games wear on and as the series wears on, you might be able to do to them what you did to Phoenix, especially if you're also making them work on the other end. The Wolves have to have an energy and stamina edge in this series. I think it was one of their powers against Phoenix was just the way they were able to grind the Suns down as the games wore on. And it's no coincidence, I think, that games 1 through 3, they took the games over in the second half. And I think that's going to be a huge weapon here, especially as it relates to Jokic and his ability to play defense. We know Jokic is going to show up on the offensive end of the floor at all times. He just does, right? He could always play at a slow pace, kind of bring the game down to his speed on the offensive end of the floor, regardless of what he's feeling fatigue-wise. But on the other end of the floor, he's not going to be able to do that. So if you're able to get him moving, get him a little winded and tired as the game wears on that end of the floor, it's a major advantage for the Wolves down the stretch of these games. And one way they can really execute late in games, I feel like, is just using Ant's energy, stamina, and just physical gifts to overwhelm Denver. at times.
Yeah, and I think it goes to, and I'm going to be interested to see if they put KCP on Ant initially, or if they opt to go with Aaron Gordon there. I think at times we'll probably see both of those looks. Like I remember watching Dallas games and Aaron Gordon guarded Luka. We've historically seen KCP guard Ant, but I'm interested to see what they prioritize there. But even then, whoever it is, make them feel 25 screens a game. Whoever that guy is that's on Ant, if for no other reason, and both of those guys are really good at that. They're like Jaden and Nikhil, but right, it's kind of always like if Jaden has to be running around guarding whoever he's got to be guarding in a game, we kind of temper our expectations for what to get from him offensively, right?
Right.
And I think, in my opinion, whether it's immediately or at some point, I think they're going to have to go to Aaron Gordon on Ant to help neutralize that. And then if you make Aaron Gordon work, well, he's a work player on the other side of the floor too, right? Like he's fighting for offensive rebounds like that, particularly in the way that they guard him. Like I think Aaron Gordon is a really good athlete in really good shape too, but that's a tough task. If your job is like being sent to crash every single time offensively on the glass, and then now you got to bust back to get onto Ant and then to navigate a couple screens. I mean, you put stress on the opponent by Ant continuing to make the right decisions against this. And then at other times, Ant like just take over too, right? And go past Jokic, try and force that switch, whatever it might be. I think of a lot of it starts there. Another weapon for the Wolves, Gobert defensively. Let's talk about that one a little bit. We know the way they prefer to line it up. Towns on Jokic, Gobert on Gordon. There's definitely going to be some times when Rudy does take Jokic. They're probably going to prioritize, though, having him whenever Aaron Gordon's on the floor, having him on Aaron Gordon. That's just going through his defensive clips. That's what it looks like. I asked Gobert at practice today what it's like to approach guarding Jokic when you're sometimes guarding him and sometimes not. And what Rudy said was, quote, "I always say that when I'm not directly guarding him, I'm always guarding him. I feel the same way with anybody that's on the floor. Phoenix with KD, all these guys. I see the game not in a direct matchup way, but more in a global matchup way. So just want to try and make him work. Obviously, he's a 3-time MVP. He's been the best player for the last 3 years. So it's just about us, and we're going to be able to adapt and be able to compete at the highest level." That's when the Wolves have looked like they have a weapon defensively in this series that slows down the special Denver offense. Rudy looks like a weapon in this series, and I think that will be, or in the previous matchups, and I think that's what it's going to look like in this series.
Well, the key to that is, Aaron Gordon not making shots, obviously. And off the top of your head, I just looked it up while you were talking there. Do you know what he shot from 3-point range in the Lakers series?
He only made one, right?
Yeah, 1 for 10.
10. I didn't know how many.
1 for 10 in the series against the Lakers, and he was 29% for the season.
Right.
Which was 5% worse than he was last season.
Right.
From 3-point range. So
it's such an interesting one, man.
Yeah,
and it's such an interesting, like, if you're Malone, like, what are you telling him to do? Do you start by saying, like, take him? And like,
well, I mean, I don't think it's going to affect the Wolves either way, because the Wolves are just going to play the percentages. If Aaron Gordon comes out in game 1 and hits his first 2 threes, I don't think it's going to affect how the Wolves play defense at all.
Well, and
they're just going to say, right? They're just going to say, keep taking them. Then go ahead, fire away. They're going to play the percentages there. And they'll play them all series. If Aaron Gordon goes crazy from 3-point range, Denver is going to win the series. Like
right.
That's just going to happen, right? You have to give something up.
Mm-hmm.
And we wondered what that was going to be in the Phoenix series, given all their weapons. But in the Denver series, that is the easy thing you point to and say, we are giving this up. Go ahead and shoot, have fun. But we know they don't want to do that. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the moments when Rudy is guarding Jokic, just when that happens. Karl obviously has to stay out of foul trouble, but if Karl gets into foul trouble, the Wolves have a weapon in this series that they did not have last year, which is to bring Naz in for a few minutes and have Naz play that role. Naz did that in the last was it 2 meetings? two times they played, or the 2 games in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did that.
He played really well in that one game that they won in Denver on the 28th or whatever. Yeah.
Nas is capable. I wouldn't, you don't do it for a whole game, or probably not as long as he did it then, but Nas is capable of guarding him in stretches, and that was not something they had in the series last year. Kyle can do it too. Mm-hmm. Like, they just have so many guys that they can put on Jokic that they can prevent everybody from getting into foul trouble, because they all collectively can do it for stretches at a time. So
yeah, it's an interesting one of like, how much do you want to put Rudy on him? And what they've done, not all the time, sometimes they even try and put him on another like non-shooter. But if Gordon's off the floor, then Rudy's often going to guard Jokic.
Right.
Like, they kind of put him on like sinking off of Christian Brown. I saw that a little bit, but largely if Cat's off the floor, which I think is going to happen, because I would assume they're going to use Cat for those non-Jokic minutes at the beginning of quarters. Like, there's going to be a chunk of time. Cat can't play all the Jokic minutes and be the guy that they play through for the non-Jokic minutes, right? Like, they need to survive some of the time not in their best look against Denver, which is Cat on Jokic, Gobert lurking. I think you try and see if Reed and Anderson can give you that, because they have at different times been able to execute that. But at some point, it's going to come down to Rudy. At periods, particularly if Cat is in foul trouble, Rudy one-on-one on him. And it really makes Jokic a scorer, because they just guard him with one, and just Rudy on him. And it was interesting, like, watching it. Is like, when Jokic tried to score, he scored. He scored in that look. And you remember the very last game they played him in the season, game 80, Jokic took over as a scorer there. So I was just kind of sitting in my head of like, it's double almost at all costs, right? Like, figure out ways to not do that. But I was watching the other possessions, and when it's Gobert on Jokic, and Jokic isn't the one shooting, or it's not for him, and it's just like Reggie Jackson or somebody else coming off, like, Rudy did a great job, or Jamal Murray, of kind of like in between playing two there. I just think if you're Denver and it is Gobert on him, that's when you're just like feeding Jokic. But if you can stay away from that, I think Rudy can kind of handle his own in helping the defense, globally in those spots. But Jokic is tough, man. It was really Anthony Davis, who's up there near Rudy Gobert's level, couldn't handle it one-on-one either. He just might be a guy that you can't do one-on-one against. So the tactic becomes these different looks, trying different things, seeing what you got, knowing that you're going to probably have to go to all three of your weapons, which is Cat on Jokic, Gobert on Jokic, or Kyle/Nas on Jokic with Gobert out there. Yeah. I mean, all three of those are going to probably have to work throughout this series to be able to win 4 games at different periods of time.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking back to the Phoenix series, and I'm like, okay, so Kevin Durant, for most of that series, was able to kind of score when the Wolves just left him kind of one-on-one, right? Mm-hmm. And the Wolves were content to basically let Kevin Durant do his thing from the mid-range and score on them. And it worked largely because the Wolves were trying to shut down Phoenix from taking threes. And I feel like the same kind of principle would apply here. It's like, if Jokic is going to go to the basket, try to bully his way for 2 points every time, to me, Denver becomes Denver when you activate Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and KCP from 3-point range. That is when Denver really becomes Denver. Yeah. If you turn Jokic into a 2-point scorer, I don't think that's necessarily the worst outcome for the Wolves on defense.
Well, and particularly if it's in just these like blip stretches, right?
Right. If it's just for those couple minutes at a time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's much more important to shut down his ability to set up MPJ and Murray for open threes. That to me is priority number 1 defensively. And then you just see if Rudy can alter a couple or whatever. Like, I just think that that's another of the poisons you have to pick in this series. I really think priority number 1 is shutting down MPJ and Jamal Murray from killing you from outside. You do that, and I think you're on your way to beating these guys.
Yeah,
I,
no, I agree with that.
yeah.
They agree too, right? Like this is their tactic. This is what it's been.
Mhm.
And the Wolves have won the Nikola Jokic minutes this season in this series. 2-2 for the series, but the Wolves, when Nikola Jokic was on the floor in those 4 games, won those 143 minutes by 14 points. And they do that not by stopping Jokic, but by limiting they did that by limiting the playmaking element of that. Now Denver's going to know this stuff coming in, and they're going to be like, okay, how can we position the chessboard in a way to make Jokic still a playmaker in the seemingly scoring situations, and like that's the chess match in all of this. I think it's less so about matchups for them and more so about positioning, and can you really exploit the things that the Wolves are ignoring? They're gonna care about Michael Porter Jr. They're gonna care about Jamal Murray. The thing that they're leaving open, and maybe this is a way to move into potential like weak points that the Wolves have in this series, but it's Gordon, man. I think a lot of it is Gordon, and like, can Jokic still find him as a cutter in those situations, and can they keep him off of the offensive glass? The Lakers tried to do a lot of the same stuff against Gordon, and he was just like, he got down into the scrum underneath the basket and was just pulling offensive rebounds throughout that series. And it's why Gordon, even if he does shoot 1 for 10 from 3 in the series, is not like a negative to them.
Right.
Because he can cut, he can offensive rebound, he can play make at the top a little bit where you got to guard him traditionally, and he's a good defender. Like, there's no way Aaron Gordon is going to be played off the floor in this series. So if you're the Wolves, you're like, all right, here's our initial tactic, is to kind of ignore him. But I don't know, like the 1B part of it is like not letting Gordon take advantage of the fact that you're ignoring him. I think he's a big part of it. The Nuggets got on the offensive glass throughout this series against the Wolves, more so in the games when the Wolves didn't have as big of players. But that's a big team from Denver that I think is going to put an emphasis on the offensive glass through Gordon. Jokic obviously is a beast in there as well. Big defensive rebounding series for the Wolves. And I will say, going off of Phoenix, I mean, Rudy, typical like vacuum defensive rebounding, like up to show on the Durant mid-range pull-up, recovers back, snatches it. Like there was that. Carl had a bunch of, I thought, securing defensive rebounds and potential offensive rebound situations. But that's a potential weakness given how we know that they're going to match up with them, I think.
Yeah, you kind of led me into the other point I wanted to make in this, which is this series might be won on the boards. And because I think back, especially just watching Game 5 of Denver Lakers, a lot of those back-breaking buckets down the stretch for Denver came off of offensive rebounds. Like the Lakers defended the initial possession well and would force a miss. They just couldn't clean up the glass, and then boom, it's back out for an open 3, and that's how teams get a lot of open 3s, as we know, is offensive rebound leading into an open look from 3. So if you want, part of shutting off Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. in this series is cleaning up the offensive glass. It goes hand in hand with how the Wolves play defense. You have to do both things because they will get loose and open for 3 if you start giving up offensive boards. So that is never more so. The Wolves have tried to become a good rebounding team for the last 2 years. Never more so is that going to be put to the test and more important than this series right now, because if you clean up these possessions after one shot, and that's so much of a win against this Denver team. Because they thrive when you make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, if you play fundamental sound basketball, I think the Wolves can win. But if the Wolves make mistakes and aren't minding these things, Denver is going to make them pay. They will make you pay for every mistake that you make. And
I feel like the mistakes do come more at the advantage of Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., right? Like, obviously it starts with Jokic and Murray at the top, but we feel good about the looks that the Wolves can give those top 2 items, right? We feel good about as good as you can feel about the tactic that you have against Jokic. You feel good about the idea of 48 minutes of Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker on Jamal Murray. I think where they can take advantage of you is, like we said, with Gordon as a cutter and on the offensive glass, and then losing Michael Porter Jr., who's not just on a heater, but is a knockdown shooter in this. I'm looking at that as being really important fallout, the two of them. And yeah, just not forgetting about them. Not forgetting about them when, even though your defensive strategy is to kind of forget about Aaron Gordon a little bit, don't. And then with Michael Porter Jr., whether it's Ant or Mike Conley taking that one, like you can't give him that half second. You can't get detached there. I think that a lot of that, if they put Ant on Michael Porter Jr. during the regular season, I think a lot of this is about Ant staying dialed enough to stay connected to Michael Porter Jr. because he can hurt you with 4 threes in a quarter. If you start losing them. I know we were talking about that when we were watching one of the Lakers games in Phoenix together, but Michael Porter Jr. is a big part of this too, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's almost, in my mind, he's almost equal with shutting down Jamal Murray in some ways, I think, because just the way he can, like you said, get on a heater in the game is it changes the game. It absolutely changes the game when he's rolling the way that he can roll in a series. And, if they put Ant on him, that is going to be a huge test for Ant, and maybe a way that Denver can wear Ant down a little bit is by having Ant chase him around.
Yeah.
And that's not Ant's favorite thing to do on the defensive end of the floor. We know Ant loves his on-ball defense. He's gotten better off the ball, but off the ball is still just not what he prefers to be doing, and where he's most vulnerable on the defensive end. And you can't afford to be lackadaisical or even off like you said, a split second to allow Michael Porter an open look for 3.
Just not a lot of hiding spots in this one.
Yeah.
Or rest or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, that's why I kind of threw out on Twitter the other day. I'm like, for stretches of time, if you're looking for an ideal defensive lineup against these guys, I think in the last series it was take Karl out, put Nickeil in, and match up that way. I think in this series, the ideal defensive lineup is take Mike out, put Nickeil in, Jaden on Porter, Nickeil on Murray, Ant on KCP, and play it that way with Karl on Jokic and Rudy on Gordon.
Such a luxury to have Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
It is.
And their ability to, like, it's kind of cool that Nickeil Alexander-Walker can come in for Karl Anthony Towns to present a better defensive setup in the Phoenix series, and then he can come in for Mike Conley, who's a foot shorter, and kind of the same sort of thing works. It's one of my favorite things about this team. I think it's one of the coolest things about it is that shape shifting that they can do, that they can sub a 1 in for a 4. They do it all the time. Then 1 for a 5. They do that all the time and just have this ability to slide from a 2 big look to a 4 wing look. And defensively, that's a weapon. That is a weapon for them because they've been doing it all year. They are comfortable in that. The one other potential weak point I had down is transition defense for the Wolves. Start by saying that was a huge problem a season ago. Something they were super intentional about, the Wolves coming into this season and have done a good job of for the season as a whole. But there have been those pockets of time when, particularly if they're turning it over, or just like in general, where the opponent's finding those hit ahead passes, it's what leads to those runs that they give up. They don't give up runs in the half court. Like, that's just, they're that good. They don't give up 5 baskets in 6 possessions. The times when they do that is when, in this sense, Jokic rebound, hit ahead pass, whatever it is, and they just start going and going. And it's a potential weakness, I think, of the Wolves in this series, though they've done a good job of not allowing that to be a weakness for the majority of the regular season. But as I was thinking of maybe non-player specific things as weaknesses, that's just always going to be one I'm going to keep in mind for the Wolves' transition defense.
Yeah, and it's a permanent Achilles heel of this team, but one that they have done a better job of protecting this season than they did a season ago. That's kind of what the series boils down to. It's like the Wolves from a year ago are a better team in the areas they were weak at a year ago.
Yep.
They're a deeper team than they were coming into this series, considering Naz and Jaden both missed it. And Denver is, we think, not as good of a team as they were a year ago because they don't have quite the depth that they had a season ago. And that's, those little things on the margin, does that turn a 5-game loss into a 6 or 7 game win of a series? I still don't know if it does. I honestly feel like, just thinking about this in my head, this series, I almost feel like in some ways is in the Wolves' hands. Like if the Wolves play A games throughout, like A+ game, 8 or A+ games throughout the series, I think their A to A+ game is better than a Denver A game. I do. I just think because of how they match up. And I think the way Denver beats them is when they don't do things like rebound or are turning the ball over on offense. That is how Denver will beat them in the series, is if the Wolves contribute to beating themselves.
No, I mean, and I can see that, right? Like I can see the Wolves losing a game because Aaron Gordon has 9 offensive rebounds. Or
I can't see them losing the series because of that. Yeah,
exactly. Like, and that's just, if this is a 7-game series, that's part of it. And and the Wolves might win a series, some game in this series because they get 13 offensive rebounds between Cat and Rudy or something like that. Or Mike Conley makes 6 of 9 threes or whatever it might be. Like it's the things that you are going to allow. Can you limit them to a quarter, right? Okay. They got out in transition in the second quarter.
Yeah.
Are we going to react to that in the third quarter and get back and not allow that to happen? Or do we need to adjust something matchup wise that allows us to be back more, to run, those sort of things? That's when inevitably Denver goes on a run in a game in this, are they live in the middle of a game going to be able to diagnose why Denver is on a run here, adjust and punch back? And Denver is a really hard team to do that against because they keep their gloves up the whole time, but it is in a little bit different of a way than the Phoenix series, but there's a meticulous element needing to be meticulous to this series. And it's why I feel better about the Wolves' ability to be meticulous and think the game, because they just thought the Phoenix series and they won the Phoenix series because they didn't just use talent and size and whatever. They played as smart, if not smarter than Phoenix. And to beat Denver, they're going to have to play as smart, if not smarter to them. I'm with you. It's a margins game, and it's not letting one of those margin advantages, last for multiple games. It can't happen. You're going to lose if that happens.
That's just it. And Denver is just perfectly positioned to take advantage on the margins if you are not seizing those advantages yourself. And that's why I have a feeling this is going to be a deep series, potentially going the distance, because I feel like each game is going to be so close and so nip and tuck the entire way, that and big momentum swings and things like that. But I do think, to your point, I think the Wolves are a smarter team. They've gotten smarter than they were a year ago, smarter throughout the season. You feel more confident about Ant's ability, late game offense, given what he showed, especially in game 4 of that Phoenix series. And I think one thing about Ant and his game and just being in the arena for games 3 and 4 in Phoenix, Ant has a way of affecting the atmosphere in a road playoff environment that I don't think any player or team I've ever seen has. Like when he had a couple dunks, or he had that bomb 3, in game 4, like the whole arena was like, oh crap. You don't see that. Like if Ant goes on a heater in one of these fourth quarters, Denver's crowd is as good as they come in the NBA.
For sure.
But I you just can't help but think like he will put fear into a home crowd.
Sure.
Sometimes maybe just the threat of him going off in a fourth quarter like that. I think he has the ability to just affect the energy in an arena and of an opponent now in ways that he maybe didn't have before.
I think that's great. I think, and that's kind of the idea of like, can we keep all these marginal things marginal enough so that Ant can go at one point and make that 14-4 run happen? You know, it is keeping everything else leveled up so Ant can do his thing at some point when you've adjusted the defense so it's more open for him. I mean, that's what happened when Ant had 31 in the second half. They broke it open with Carl, and they couldn't afford to apply the same level of focus on Ant and survive. And that's what needs to happen. The other is Ant can't do it by himself, not against the Denver Nuggets. It needs to be everyone else doing their thing so as to give Ant the chance to be special, because I don't know, he clearly has that in his bag now. Chris, is there anything you're working on in advance of this, or anything else we missed on this that you want to hit on before we wrap?
No, I think it's just going to be a really fun series overall. I'm expecting 7, honestly.
Have you ever covered a series that you're more excited about from like this is just going to be an awesome series? I mean, you covered the Blackhawks high level for a long
good
time.
Question. I mean, I covered a Stanley Cup final once upon a time, and that the excitement level for that was obviously very, very high. So that we're probably not there yet when you cover covered a championship series, but probably any other series I've covered doesn't match the excitement level I have going into this one, because I just think it's just going to be fascinating.
It's got it all, man. This has got it all.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
Got the MVP against the rising star. If you want to just go on that level, that's awesome. And there's such different types of star players. And then you have this sweet tactical battle that comes out of having Rudy Gobert.
It's got everything for the casuals and the nerds alike.
Yes, love it. That's perfect. That is like the ideal basketball series. I just hope that, like, you know, and particularly in a time where it's just not a playoffs with a lot of the traditional star players, I think this could be an interesting series from like a standpoint of people really getting into it because they're really enjoying the basketball of it, and some of the chess of this too, with, you know, the big fireworks of Jokic and Ant. I don't know. I've been looking forward to this since we were, you know, I guess probably since last year, since you and Jay sat in that room after Game 5, recorded a podcast. Like, hey, I don't know
where this is going.
And we were wrong. Here they are. They're back. They're a better team than they were. They got more health than they had a season ago. This is going to be a blast.
Head coach not excluded from that.
Yeah, man. That is just like the one element of this where I'm like, all right, we got to cover it, but like, I don't know. Like, I don't know
what this means. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how to do anything with it, but it'll be fun. We'll keep updating on that. For listeners, we'll probably get some more clarity on Finch and stuff at practice tomorrow. Our plan with the show is Britt and I are going to record tomorrow morning, probably before practice, so that'll be out in the afternoon, and then before we know it, we'll be in Denver, try and maybe get something to happen with a Denver writer, get their perspective on this before we get it going. But this has been fun, Chris. Appreciate you stepping in and talking about where we're at. Everything kind of evolves every 24 hours. You got something new here. I mean, you know, you're writing about it every day, but appreciate you doing it, man.
No problem. Thank you for having me as always.
You can follow Chris on Twitter at Christopher Hine. Much like we said with Jace yesterday, like no better time to be following and reading the beat writers. They're writing even more than the crazy amounts they always write, and they're just going to keep you up to date on everything that is being said. I think that's cool. There's sometimes we don't have enough time on here or even on Twitter or whatever to share all the quotes, but Chris and Jace and John are doing with that. They're doing a great job of covering the minutia of this and the high level stuff. So follow Chris on Twitter at Christopher Hine. Read his stuff at the start in the Star Tribune or at startribune.com until what it was tomorrow, Thursday morning, afternoon with Britt. He's Chris. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.